The blue light of the monitor was the only thing cutting through the darkness of the room. Sarah sat motionless, her eyes locked on the timestamp. 2 a.m. A notification box bloomed in the center of her screen, stark and clinical. Update required. Legacy tools deprecated. She clicked details with a sharp rhythmic tap of her mouse. The software interface, a workspace she had spent 10 years mastering, began to flicker. It was not a crash. It was a purge. One by one, the local processing modules she relied on for her daily work began to vanish from the file directory. A progress bar crawled across the screen, eating away at the foundation of her workflow. She reached for the task manager to force quit the process, but the cursor stuttered and froze. The application was no longer responding to local commands. In the space where her primary tools once sat, a new icon pulsed, with a rhythmic artificial glow. AI assistant enabled. She watched the final module delete, the screen refreshing to reveal a hollow, unfamiliar layout. The software was stripping itself down to the studs, clearing the room for something she had never asked for and did not want. Sarah leaned back, the chair groaning in the silence. Sarah moved the mouse, the cursor darting toward the settings menu to revert the update. Her finger hovered over the Restore Previous Version button. She clicked. Nothing happened. She clicked again, harder, the plastic of the mouse clicking sharply in the quiet room. The button remained a dull, lifeless gray. It was unresponsive, a ghost of a command that no longer existed. She tried to navigate to the local file path, but the directory was empty. The software had effectively severed its tether to her hard drive. It was no longer a tool that lived on her machine. It was a thin, fragile window into a server farm she did not own and could not access. She reached for the Ethernet cable, pulling it from the back of the tower, expecting the screen to go black or the process to halt. Instead, the interface simply switched to a cloud syncing icon, buffering, waiting for a connection it didn't strictly need to maintain its dominance. She was no longer the master of her workspace. She was merely a user, granted temporary access to a platform that now dictated the terms of her labor. What happened on Sarah's screen was not a glitch. It was a symptom of a massive, coordinated shift across the entire tech landscape. This is the Silicon Eviction Notice. Industry giants, names that once stood for local power and professional autonomy, are now clearing house. They are systematically dismantling the infrastructure of human-led creation. Look at the giants. Intel and Adobe. They are not merely updating software or hardware. They are actively removing the foundational tools that built their empires. They are treating their most loyal, long-term users like unwanted tenants in a building slated for demolition. The logic is as cold as it is calculated. By forcing a migration toward high-margin, cloud-dependent systems, these companies are effectively evicting the human element. The transition is deliberate, quiet, and relentless. It is a top-down mandate that turns once reliable workstations into mere terminals for data extraction. The era of the autonomous offline creator is being phased out, replaced by a model where the user is a data source for the machine. The eviction has begun. These companies are effectively shoving their most dedicated users into the digital equivalent of an assisted living facility. It is a quiet, sterile confinement. The robust offline features that once defined professional workflows are being stripped away, dismantled piece by piece to make room for new, high-margin AI roommates. These digital entities do not pay rent. They do not contribute to the user's craft. They simply occupy space. The interface, once a clean workspace for human intent, is now cluttered with generative prompts and predictive suggestions that demand attention. Every manual tool, every precise control dial, is being throttled or hidden behind layers of cloud-based abstraction. The software is no longer a partner in creation. It is a landlord. It monitors every keystroke, every brushstroke, and every decision, subtly steering the user toward automated outcomes that benefit the platform's bottom line. The user is forced to live alongside these intrusive algorithms, unable to evict them, unable to turn them off, and unable to return to the independence they once enjoyed. The workspace has been redesigned for the convenience of the machine, not the creator. It is a systematic displacement, a forced cohabitation where the human skill that built these empires is now relegated to a secondary, low-priority status. The displacement is not limited to software interfaces. It is etched into the very silicon of our machines. Consider the hardware sector, where the shift is even more absolute. Intel, once the undisputed king of consumer-grade processing power, is undergoing a radical, top-down transformation. They are pivoting their massive manufacturing capacity away from the desktop rigs that built their empire. Instead, the focus has shifted entirely toward high-density data center chips designed specifically for AI training. This is a fundamental betrayal. The company is effectively turning its back on the enthusiasts and professionals who fueled its growth. By prioritizing server-side workloads, they are signaling that the individual user is no longer the primary target. The manufacturing lines are being reconfigured to serve the insatiable hunger of AI. The brand that once promised to empower the individual with local speed is now dedicating its resources to the massive, centralized farms that power these algorithms. The foundation is being hollowed out, and the hardware that once acted as a tool for personal creation is being repurposed into a backbone for corporate data extraction. The physical reality of this shift is felt in the heat radiating from every desktop. Gaming rigs, once the pinnacle of personal computing, are being relegated to secondary status. The new silicon architecture demands more power and generates significantly more heat, yet it offers diminishing returns for the actual player. These chips are no longer tuned for the frame rates or low latency responsiveness that define a high-end gaming experience. Instead, they are optimized for the heavy, server-side workloads of AI training tasks the average user will never touch. The hardware is becoming more expensive, yet less efficient for the specific needs of the consumer. It is a misalignment of purpose. A gamer pays a premium for a processor that is effectively idling while it waits for background AI processes to finish their calculations. The machine is no longer a dedicated instrument for the user's hobby. It is a thermal-heavy vessel for corporate data processing. The industry is effectively telling the user that their machine is merely a host for a more important guest. The gaming rig is being hollowed out. The gaming community is receiving a message that is as cold as it is clear. Their hobby is now a low-priority tenant in the new silicon architecture. For years, the industry thrived on the passion of those who demanded the absolute best from their hardware. Now, that relationship is being dismantled. The architecture itself is being repartitioned, carving out massive slices of processing capability for AI-driven tasks that have nothing to do with the user's experience. Gamers are finding themselves living in a house that is being renovated around them, with their own space shrinking to accommodate a new, high-margin roommate. This is not merely a change in specs. It is a fundamental shift in status. The user, once the primary stakeholder, is relegated to the background. Every cycle of the processor is now a negotiation between the user's intent and the system's background AI demands. If the hardware cannot handle both, the gaming experience is the first thing to be throttled. It is a digital eviction notice, served in the form of stuttering frame rates and forced background updates. The industry has decided that the loyalists who built their market are no longer the priority. The hobby is being treated as an inconvenience, a legacy relic that must pay rent in the form of lost performance and compromised autonomy. The shift is not limited to silicon. It is manifesting in the very software interfaces that creators rely on daily. Adobe's Firefly integration serves as the perfect case study for this transformation. Users who have spent years mastering stable, reliable workflows are now finding their workspaces cluttered with intrusive generative prompts. Every time a designer reaches for a familiar tool, a new, glowing suggestion box appears, urging the use of AI-generated content. It is a persistent, visual noise that interrupts the creative flow. These prompts are aggressive placeholders designed to steer the user away. The interface, once a clean, predictable environment for precise work, is being reconfigured to prioritize AI suggestions at every turn. Loyal users are now forced to navigate an ecosystem that feels increasingly alien. The software is no longer a silent partner. The workspace is being colonized, one prompt at a time, forcing the user to fight against their own tools to maintain manual precision. The assault on human expertise goes deeper than mere interface clutter. It strikes at the engine room of creative production. Local rendering modules, once the bedrock of precise, manual control, are being intentionally throttled. These engines, which previously allowed creators to fine-tune every pixel and frame in real time, now stutter under artificial limitations. The software detects a heavy local task and immediately redirects the load, pushing the process toward cloud-based servers. This is not an optimization. It is a calculated bottleneck. Creators are finding that their own machines are being held back. The latency is palpable. A task that once took seconds now requires a handshake with a remote server, a wait for a queue. The software actively discourages the use of local resources, making the manual path slower, more cumbersome, and prone to error. The precision that defined professional work is being traded for the convenience of a black box algorithm, leaving the creator with less control. The pressure is no longer just visual, it is operational. Every manual task is now met with a suffocating layer of AI suggestions that refuse to be ignored. When a creator attempts to adjust a curve or refine a brushstroke, the software intercepts the input, offering a generated alternative before the action can even complete. It is a persistent, unwanted intervention that treats human intent as a secondary concern. The workflow has become a battle against the very tools designed to facilitate it. If a user persists in manual editing, the software introduces subtle friction, slowing down response times or flagging the action as inefficient. It is a systematic phasing out of human skill, replacing nuanced decision-making with standardized, algorithmically approved results. The software is learning to ignore the creator, prioritizing the speed of the machine over the precision of the hand. This creates a claustrophobic environment. Every click is a negotiation. Every edit a struggle against a system that wants to do the work for them. The autonomy that once defined the creative process is being eroded. By the time a project is finished, the creator realizes that their own fingerprints have been scrubbed away, replaced by the sterile, predictable output of an assistant. Behind the intrusive prompts and the throttled engines lies a cold, calculated shift in corporate priorities. The mask has finally slipped. These companies are no longer building tools for creators, they are building data pipelines for enterprise AI contracts. The business logic is brutal in its simplicity. A loyal user with a perpetual license or a standard subscription provides a predictable, capped revenue stream. In contrast, enterprise clients pay massive, recurring premiums for access to proprietary AI training sets and large-scale automation. To the shareholders, the individual creator is no longer a customer to be served, but a low-margin tenant occupying valuable digital real estate. The software is being redesigned to prioritize these high-margin partnerships, effectively pricing out the very community that built the brand's reputation. Every feature update is now a negotiation between potential profit and user autonomy, with the scale tipping heavily toward the former. They are liquidating the goodwill of their most dedicated supporters to satisfy the demands of a new, corporate-focused bottom line. The creative suite has become a sacrifice. The transformation is complete. The software is no longer a local application. It has been weaponized into a subscription-based data pipeline. Every project file, every brushstroke, and every layer adjustment is now funneled directly into the cloud. The interface acts as a gatekeeper, demanding a constant connection to corporate servers to function. If the internet drops, the tools vanish. This is not a service. It is a tether. By forcing users into these closed ecosystems, companies ensure that no creative output remains private. The software monitors usage patterns, harvesting granular data to refine its own generative models. It is a feedback loop. The ecosystem is designed to be inescapable. Proprietary file formats and cloud-locked assets make migration nearly impossible. Users find themselves trapped in a digital cage, where their own creative history is held hostage. Every update tightens the grip. The pipeline is open, the data is flowing, and the user is now permanently locked into a system that prioritizes extraction over creation. The final mask has fallen. The industry has reached a point where the user is no longer the customer. The user is the data source. Every creative decision, every failed attempt, and every successful render is now stripped of its human context and reduced to a training vector. You are not paying for a tool. You are paying to be the laboratory rat in a massive, automated experiment. The software does not care about your vision. It cares about the patterns it can extract from your workflow to build a cheaper, faster version of you. Your expertise is being harvested, digitized, and fed into the very models that will eventually render your skills obsolete. The paradigm shift is absolute. Companies have successfully flipped the script, turning the act of creation into a resource extraction process. They track your cursor movements, your color choices, and your project timelines, treating these human nuances as raw material for their proprietary algorithms. You are a cog in their machine, a source of high-quality, human-labeled data. The relationship is entirely parasitic. There is no partnership, no support, and no loyalty. There is only the harvest. The industry is currently gripped by a fever, a frantic, desperate sprint toward the AI gold rush. In this blind pursuit of high-margin revenue, tech giants are systematically torching the very foundations that once secured their dominance. They are burning the bridges to the communities, developers, and power users who built their brands from the ground up. These companies treat their most loyal fan bases as an obstacle to be cleared, rather than the bedrock of their success. Every update that alienates a professional is a plank ripped from the bridge. Every forced migration to a cloud-based AI model is a match struck against a support beam. They are discarding the architects of their own empires, assuming that the allure of generative automation will replace the need for genuine brand loyalty. By abandoning the people who actually understand their tools, these corporations are isolating themselves in a sterile, automated vacuum. The bridges are already smoldering, the wood is blackened, and the heat is rising. They are so focused on the horizon that they fail to see the ground beneath them crumbling. The fever will break. It always does. When the current AI hype cycle inevitably cools, the industry will wake up to a landscape it barely recognizes. The high-margin revenue streams will dry up as the novelty fades, leaving behind a hollowed-out corporate structure. These companies will scan the horizon for the loyalists they once discarded, but they will find only silence. The ecosystem they built is a house of cards, dependent on the constant, forced participation of users who have already lost interest. When the algorithms stop generating and the server costs outweigh the dwindling subscription fees, the reality of their self-inflicted isolation will set in. They will look for the architects, the power users, and the creative minds that once defined their market dominance, only to realize those people have long since moved on. The giants will be left standing in a digital wasteland, surrounded by proprietary code that no one wants and infrastructure that serves no purpose. The gold rush will end, the servers will hum in the dark, and the companies will find themselves alone in the ruins of the empires they dismantled. The exodus has already begun. It is quiet, methodical, and entirely irreversible. The power users, the ones who spent years mastering the complexities of professional software, are no longer waiting for the next forced update. They are packing their digital bags. Hard drives are being wiped of proprietary bloatware and replaced with lean, local, open-source alternatives. This is not a protest, it is a relocation. Engineers are migrating to Linux-based workflows where they own the kernel. Artists are returning to legacy builds that function without a cloud handshake. They are building private repositories and hardening their autonomy. The giants are watching their most valuable assets. The people who actually know how to push their tools to the limits simply walk out the door. They are choosing the stability of offline independence over the flickering promise of an AI assistant that monitors every keystroke. The migration is accelerating, and with every byte transferred to a private drive, the relevance of the corporate empire fades. The eviction notice has been served in full, but the tenants are no longer waiting for the bailiffs. They are turning the key in the lock from the inside. Across thousands of workstations, the final act of defiance is playing out in the subscription management portal. One by one, the recurring payments are being severed. The cancel subscription button, once a source of anxiety, is now a trigger for liberation. With every click, the data pipeline goes dark. The corporations that treated their users as disposable fuel are suddenly staring at a ledger that refuses to balance. They expected loyalty to be a permanent debt, but they forgot that a contract requires two willing parties. The power dynamic has shifted. The landlord is left with a massive, expensive, empty server farm, and the tenants have reclaimed their autonomy. There is no negotiation left. No more feedback forms. No more pleas for feature parity. Just the cold, hard silence of a canceled account. The users are not looking back. They are closing the browser tabs, shutting down the cloud-dependent interfaces, and turning their attention to the local tools that remain under their command. The era of the digital landlord is ending, not with a protest, but with the quiet, devastating sound of 1 million bank accounts closing at once. The rent is no longer being paid. The frenzy of the cancellation has settled into a steady, rhythmic hum of preparation. There is no more shouting, no more debate. The air in the digital workspace feels different now, stripped of the constant nagging pressure to upgrade or conform. Users are clearing their desks, not of physical clutter, but of the digital dependencies that once dictated their creative flow. They are moving archives from cloud storage to local drives, watching the progress bars crawl across the screen as their data returns to their own control. It is a process of reclamation. Every file moved is a brick pulled from the walls of the corporate fortress. The tension has evaporated, replaced by a focused, quiet resolve. They are packing their bags, preparing for a future that exists entirely outside the reach of the landlord. There is a strange, newfound clarity in the silence. No more prompts for AI assistance. No more forced updates. The migration is nearly complete. The digital rooms are being emptied of every trace of the old regime. The era of the tenant is over. Sarah looked at the screen one last time. The cloud-based interface was still open, a glowing, empty promise of efficiency. She did not hesitate. She navigated to the directory of her legacy software, a tool that required no internet, no subscription, and no permission. She launched it. The interface was sparse, clean, and entirely under her command. It responded instantly to her input, free from the latency of a remote server. She moved her files into the local workspace, watching the progress bar finish with a satisfying click. The data was hers again. She reached for the edge of the laptop lid, feeling the cool metal beneath her fingers. With a single steady motion, she pulled it down. The screen went dark, severing the connection to the digital landlord for good. She pushed the machine aside, leaving the desk clear. The room was quiet. She was a creator, on her own terms.